Do we want to end it with a bit of inflation data?
Go for it.
Okay, I'll start us off then on this, because I've been thinking about things a little bit more broadly than kind of inflation, I guess. But you're right, Paul, there's been an inflation print today. It's from the US. Inflation there is running at 8.2% versus the forecasted 8.1%, which means that the Federal Reserve's rate hikes are not working. And so the stock market recently has been going non-stop in one direction, making it entirely unlike anything I can compare it to at all. But what does seem to happen to me is that every time we get some sort of macroeconomic data, whether it's jobs data or inflation data or GDP data, share prices go down, more or less. And we talked a little bit at the top of the show about what it's like watching share prices go down on stocks that you own and so on. But one of the things that makes it easier for me, I think, is when I have some idea of why that's happening. So I don't invest on the basis of what I think macroeconomic data is going to do, certainly not is going to do in the next month or 2 months or something like that. But understanding why things are moving around is kind of helpful to me. So I was trying to do a bit of thinking about it. So last Friday there was a jobs report from the US, and that jobs report was strong, and the market went down. And it's not immediately obvious maybe why a strong jobs report should be a bad thing for stock prices. More people around, more people spending money, more people able to do stuff. Good news for businesses, right? Kind of wrong. So here's my kind of starting thought, which is that the UK and the US are both possibly in stagflation, but at any rate in a low growth, high inflation environment. And neither of those things is any good, because ideally you would want those the other way round. You'd want growth to be high and inflation to be low. And the way you try and correct those things is basically by doing the opposite thing to one another. So if you want growth, you cut interest rates and encourage people to spend, which is sort of what the UK is now attempting to encourage the Bank of England to do. Borrow a load of money, stimulate the economy, pay that back out of the stuff that you've grown the economy by. I mean, by the time this goes out, by the way, the government policy will be something entirely different again. But it's what they were trying to do at the time I was saying this. The US has taken the opposite approach. They're trying to tackle their inflation first. So rates go up. Spending goes down, the economy slows, but the idea is you bring the inflation thing under control. So what we've seen recently is a low unemployment rate from the US, lower than was expected, 3.5% against 3.7%. Look, that's a good thing for a number of reasons, but if you're trying to bring inflation down, the last thing you want is people having loads of money and going around spending it all over the damn place, because that pushes inflation up. There might be other reasons why you want people to have money, but if you're busy trying to tackle inflation, that's going to be bad, and that's why that job market news, nice though it is for people, is causing stock prices to fall. Likewise, UK GDP data, that's kind of down in August, and the UK is not in downwards mode. It's not in slowing the economy down mode. It's in speeding the economy up mode, and hell with the inflation, we'll sort that out later. So they're moving in different directions, and it's that macro stuff that's basically all the wrong way round, basically. The UK would like a strong jobs report. The US would not. The UK will live with inflation for the moment. The US won't. The US can live with a slowing GDP. The UK cannot. Everything seems to be going the wrong way macro-wise, and that to me I think is why share prices keep going down. That's my thought anyway.
That is probably the best way, the best I've heard anybody explain that so far, which has been really cool. And I wonder if it is something to do with the fact that the UK is in a pretty crap spot and has been in a pretty crap spot growth-wise for such a long time that it can't afford to not grow, and it needs to push that growth. Whereas the US is in a very different position. It's been in high growth since 2008, and it feels like we can pull back a little bit. We don't need to be better than the rest of the world at the moment. What we need is to win votes, and we need to win votes by keeping people's keeping food on the table. And I think here in the UK, on the opposite side, I think the local government know that they're not going to win any votes either way. So the best thing is to do the best for the economy and try and grow. And Liz Truss, her belief is that trickle-down economics works. That's debatable at best. But how do we see this ending then? What are we going to do?
Well, I think we've got a bit of a problem because government policy is different to our monetary policy. So it's almost like trying to race your friend in a go-kart while pressing the brake and the accelerator at the same time. That's kind of how it feels where we are. I think I think there's going to be a big policy reversal soon. I think that we understand that. Yes, I think everybody here would say that. Yeah, we're really interested in the UK growing, but there's quite an interesting way of doing it, and the way that Truss is proposing is possibly not the best way. I mean, I watched her in. She was getting rinsed on the morning shows, and she was saying, essentially, it's strange that people are commenting on these tax cuts for the rich and highlighting that as a problem, but they're not talking about what we've done for people's energy bills. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's like 145 billion spent on energy bills and 45 billion that we're going to spend on tax cuts. And that's kind of like going back to your wife and saying, I've bought a Ferrari, and she says to you, how are we going to pay for that? And you said, don't worry, I've also bought a Porsche. You know what I mean? That's kind of like, that's what she's saying, isn't it? So I think we're going to see big policy reversal. I just don't see how any of these things get through. In fact, I mean, there's already rumblings of a no confidence vote in Truss and Kwarteng, and I think that may trigger a general election. I've actually seen in some of the Tory papers that Tory councillors are worried because they've got to go and sell this on the doorsteps of the Red Wall, haven't they? They've got to try and go to people who are lifelong Labour supporters who've lent their support to the Tories and say, we're not pursuing bubble-up economics like we sort of thought we were going to be doing. We're doing trickle-down economics again. And that's worked in the past. And that's just not going to work. And a lot of these sort of Tory councillors are sort of seeing, well, we better start finding ourselves another job because we're not going to be, we're not going to have this job in a couple of years' time. And I think a lot of them are thinking, well, we might as well get that over and done with, get a general election in, because I think there's going to be a change of government, but I've thought that before. And I think at the moment we're just sort of like partying waiting with Labour. But the left and the centre has a real way of fucking this up at every opportunity. They're the strangest group of people in the world. They're like, yeah, we know the Tories are bad, but let me tell you about this guy. You know what I mean? And there's so much infighting in between parties that should be really sort of like teaming together to help each other. I noticed Labour have already come out and said, we won't be teaming up with anybody. We won't be teaming up with the SNP to get in. And you just start to think to yourself, like, I could also see a situation where somebody squeaks in here. Lib Dems side with Lib Dems and Greens side with the Tories or something, just to make some mixer. You could see something like that happening. So yeah, they're a way of destroying themselves. I think there's policy reversal coming, but I don't think it'll be enough to save Truss.
They better not rescind the IR35 rollback. It's not completely going, but it's I could do with me to control my own finances through IR35. That'd be very helpful. That's very helpful for me and for other very small businesses, particularly individual sole traders. That's very important. So I found that very, very positive. The rest, though, not so sure. It's trickle down economics, isn't it? 101, and I thought we'd stop that now. And
yeah, well, I've been listening to a lot of sort of talks recently and about people saying, well, trickle down economics is great, but it doesn't really work. And one of the things that they want to pursue is try and bubble up economics, where you start to pay the people on the bottom of the ladders more, and they spend more in the economy. The economy is obviously run by the rich, and therefore the rich also get more money in the pocket, but everybody in the ladder feels better, rather than kind of like if you imagine somebody pouring wine in the top of those fancy glass architecture things where it kind of spills down and spills down and spills down. Well, actually we're filling it up from the bottom up, which seems like a nice thing. I mean, we haven't tried it. What the fuck? Let's just try it. Like, how bad can it be?
I mean, I hate to put a nail in your analogy there, but the latter's impossible.
I've seen it before, where you can put a pint glass on a bar. I think it was like a sports event. I was like, you put the pint glass on the bar and it fills up from the bottom. I've seen it.
Oh yes, I have seen that actually. Yeah, that was like a Carlsberg trick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have seen that. Yeah, very, very good. All right, I think we'll leave it there because we got really political at the end. No guesses as to which way Steve D leans politically, but
I voted green
thank you very much.
last time.